Well, just a quick comment about the Ole Miss game. I was really pleased with the effort, played hard, competed well in the game. When it came down to execution, when we did things and did the fundamental little things right, focused, we had good execution, we had success. And when we didn't do that, we didn't do as well, and that's usually pretty typical. And continue to have the focus on doing the little things right, discipline and execution, to get things right so that we're going to give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful. There's no rest for the weary around here. We're playing a very good team this week in South Carolina, and I think the key thing is that the players have to realize that, there's a lot of good teams. We have to refocus, recenter our energy, go to the next game. Last game was a great win, but now the next game is the only thing that really matters. We had some outstanding performances in the game on offense. Mark Ingram did a fantastic job. Vallejos, who was also recognized in the SEC as a lineman, and Barrett Jones all did a good job. Rolando McClain and Kareem Jackson both had really good games on defense. Special teams, Corey Reamer, Lee Tiffin, Nico Johnson all did a really good job on special teams for us. So, this is one of those things that I've used the analogy before. You're kind of climbing a mountain. The higher you get, the more treacherous it is, the more focus you need, the more discipline and execution, and things are a lot more critical if you make a mistake, and I think our players understand that. They need to understand it. We need to get recentered and refocused on a very good team. The only injury we had is Rod Woodson. We got some guys nicked up a little bit, but Rod Woodson will probably be out for at least a week with a patella tendon injury. It's not something that requires surgery at this point. Hopefully, after a week, we'll have to sort of play him day by day. We're really looking forward to, getting back home and playing at home. It seems like it's been a long time, and I'm sure that a national televised game on ESPN and Bryant-Denny Stadium will be something that should be a positive for our players. South Carolina is really playing well on both sides of the ball and on special teams. I think some marked differences this year is, they have a little bit more balance on offense. It's always a very challenging pro-style offense with, Steve Spurrier, who is a very good offensive coach, does a very good job coaching the quarterback and getting the ball to the right place and also getting in the right plays relative to, what you're doing on defense. I think their quarterback has played well, but they've had balance in their offense. They've got 2 or 3 running backs that they use. They've got a good group of receivers. They've got good skill players, and I think the balance is the real key. Defensively, they're very athletic. Eric Norwood obviously is an outstanding player, and so is Matthews the other end. Good edge rushers. They've got a good pressure package. Do a really, really good job. Ellis Johnson's a really good defensive coach and has done a really good job with this group, and they're one of the top defensive teams in the country. And they've got good specialists on special teams. They do a really good job with their special teams, and this is a good all-around football team. They're ranked, and they're 5-1. And other than a 4-point loss at Georgia, this team would be undefeated and probably ranked a lot higher. So this is certainly going to be a challenging game for us.
On Nico Johnson a little bit on Saturday, but haven't seen the film now. Can you talk some more about his performance and his challenges going forward?
Well, I think that, Nico's a fine young player and did a good job in the game for us. There's lots of competition out there. We're going to get Darrell Harris back, and that's the position that he plays. So those 2 guys will compete and get reps this week, and later in the week we'll have to make a decision as who's, most ready to play in certain roles relative to how both guys can contribute, and I think both guys can contribute. So, but he did a good job, especially for the first time out. Just played in regular, did a really good job on special teams as well. So we're really pleased with his progress, and as everyone on our team, we all can improve, and that's what our focus is going to be.
Coach, you've kind of missed each other a good bit during stops in your career. But how well do you know Steve Spurrier? How would you characterize your relationship with him?
Well, I've known Steve for a long time. I was his assistant in the East-West game years ago. The year I went to LSU, Butch Davis and I were his two assistants, and I've known Steve for a long time, and I know his wife as well, and so does Terry, and we have a good relationship with him. And he actually rode back on the LSU plane with me when we came back from the East-West game, and they about blew the Gator plane up in Baton Rouge when it was waiting there to pick him up and take him home. So we've I have a lot of respect for him. He's done a great job every place he's been. We played against him at LSU when he was still at Florida, and I think he's an outstanding coach and has done a really good job at South Carolina.
And also, Coach, with the advent of Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing, how many steps do you as a program have to take to watch what your players might be putting out there, and how much might you watch what other teams are putting out there?
I don't micromanage that part of what we do. I don't read that stuff. I'm in the dark ages. I can't send a text message. My kids get mad at me all the time because they text me and I call them back, and they always say, "Why didn't you just text me?" And so, this is not something that I only know how to get the film on for, South Carolina's defense, what they're doing when they're in regular and 3 wideouts and all that kind of stuff. I know how to do that, but that's the extent of it. And we have people in our organization who watch that. We tell our players that we don't want to put information out about, what we're doing internally as a team that might give someone else an advantage. And unless Jeff reads something and comes and tells me something, I know nothing about what's out there. I'm just in the dark ages when it comes to the information age, and that's probably a fault, and I probably should get with it. But everybody needs to change, I guess.
You won't be on Twitter anytime soon.
I don't think so. It's probably a good thing because that's the way everybody communicates, and that's the way all the young guys communicate. I'm not being critical of it. I'm illiterate when it comes to that stuff. I can't play video games either. I just never grew up doing it. Pac-Man was, I was 27 years old when that came out, so I just kind of missed it, It hadn't been a problem to this point, but it may be in the future.
What does Jarrell Harris bring to your defense, skill-wise?
Well, Jarrell's a very good athlete, a good player. We thought he had a role in our defense back in camp. He's obviously been out of it for a little time now, but he's very athletic. He's instinctive. He's a playmaker. He hasn't played a lot at that position, even though we moved him to that position last spring and this fall. So we'll see where he's at and try to develop and see how he can help us. But he's a very athletic guy and can run, and he's an instinctive player. So hopefully some of the carryover of the development and experience that he's had will help him make a positive contribution to what we're trying to do.
And can you comment on the circumstances that led to his suspension? We're told that he wasn't forthcoming with the internal investigation.
If that's the information, why do I need to comment on it? It is what it is. And players have to learn that, when you do the right thing, usually good things happen, and when you don't do the right thing, I've said it before, you have freedom of choice, but you don't have freedom of consequence. And, we support our players in what they do, but we also want to help them learn the lessons that are going to help them be more successful. And I certainly think Jarrell learned a lot from this, and it's going to help him be a better person and probably, help him be more successful in life.
Coach, I had two relatively related questions. The first, William Vlahos was SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, I think. And could you just talk about the job he's done in replacing Antoine at that position?
Well, he's done an outstanding job. He's a bright guy, strong. He's very athletic. His only problem that anybody could point to is He's not quite as tall as everybody else that plays that position maybe, or most people that play that position, but from a toughness, from a strength, from a competitive character standpoint, he's just as good as anybody we've ever had and is doing an outstanding job for us.
And I guess as a follow-up, we had talked after the Ole Miss game about the red zone offense and productivity and getting back, looking at the film. Is it just a case that Ole Miss was a little bit bigger, stronger up front than some of the other teams that you've played, or what do you think limited that?
No, I think that, first of all, we had 1st and 3 at the 3 twice. We got a penalty once on a play that probably would have scored a touchdown, and we fumbled a snap that hit the quarterback right in the hands on another occasion in another set of series that put us back on the 7 or 8 yard line and wasted a play. So, it was not all given Ole Miss as much credit as we possibly can. There were still some misexecutions on our part, some in the passing game and some in the errors that we made that put us behind and down a distance. So, these are all correctable things that we can improve on and certainly need to improve on and come away with touchdowns, not field goals, especially when we get it that deep.
Had a couple things, Coach. First off, could you talk about what makes Mark Ingram just so good and so effective?
Well, Mark's a very good competitor. He's got good speed. He's got power. He's built, just like you'd like a running back to be, sort of low center of gravity, explosive. The thing that I think he's really done this year is, he feels very comfortable and instinctive in making the cuts that he's making and the plays that he's running, and certainly gets the most out of it for the most part, and then has the ability to finish if he gets through the line. So I do think that, our team has blocked well, and I think our receivers have blocked well. That has enhanced his ability to make some longer runs as well. But he's really done a really good job and been a real workhorse for us so far. And, hopefully we can get some other guys going with him, and that'll make him even better.
And another question kind of related to what Gentry asked about Coach Spurrier. I don't know if you paid any attention. You were in another conference back when Florida was so good in the early, mid-'90s. I don't know if you ever saw him in the SEC championship game, if you ever studied that offense.
We played him.
Okay. How well do you remember those heydays that Florida had before these current heydays?
Look, I remember every play that we've ever gotten beat on since the flood, all right, which I've been doing this for a long time, but I can give you chapter and verse of what happened on 3rd and 12 in the Pittsburgh Steelers-Cleveland Browns game, a long time ago when we messed something up and they scored a touchdown. And I remember some of the ones that we messed up against Florida and some of the things that they did to beat us, in those first years when we were LSU. And just have a tremendous amount of respect for Steve Spurrier, and their offense is well conceived, well designed, and well executed and coached, so their players do a good job, and do a good job on defense to have a chance to stop them.
Coach talked a lot early in the season about establishing the identity. Through 6 games now, where would you say the identity of this team is?
Well, I think that at times, we've been played physical, tough, great competitive character. But I also think at times we've, lost our focus a little bit in games and not played and sustained, that intensity like you'd like. And I think that's something that we need to continue to work on. I felt that way in the Ole Miss game. We didn't play as well in the second half on defense. We needed to put the game away and never really did it, and we intercepted a pass with, 12 or 13 minutes to go in the game on the 10-yard line that would make the game go 19-10. The game's certainly not over, and you got to play for 60 minutes in the game, and there's just a small difference in having the focus and the intensity and playing extremely well and losing that small edge and not playing quite as well and making a few mental errors that allows the other team to make plays and gain momentum. And, that's something I think we need to continue to work on. So it would be more from a consistency standpoint than really an inability to do it.
Coach, can you talk more about Lee Tiffin and his improvement over the course of this year and over the course of his career with you?
Well, I think that, a few weeks ago you all were asking me why he missed 2 extra points or whatever, but so I guess, Lee's done a good job. He did a good job on kickoff for us in this last game, and anytime you make 5 field goals like he did, and he's been pretty consistent. And I think the big thing with Lee is when he stays technically in his zone of he's pretty consistent. And almost every time that he misses one, it's because of something he did wrong. It's kind of like my golf swing. When I rotate my elbow out and get that club blade off, I hit some really good slices. I mean, some that go in the record book, But if I can get that right, I can hit straight. And we all have those issues, but he's done a pretty good job all year long, and when he's missed, it's been for a reason. And when he loses his focus a little bit, he loses his technique, but other than that, he has done an outstanding job for us.
Coach, talk about Coach Spurrier being Mr. Fun and Gun himself, how he was known last year. His strong point of his team was his defense, second in pass defense in the country. This year they're ranked 4th in the SEC in total defense. Talk about how you match up with them particularly, and do you think that they pose a bigger threat than, say, Ole Miss did last week with their front 4?
Well, I think that they, as a team, they pose a tremendous threat, to our team because they're a good all-around team. They're very good on defense. Ellis Johnson does an outstanding job. When Steve Spurrier had the best teams at Florida, Bobby Stoops was the defensive coordinator. And, just like I'm kind of a defensive guy to some degree, you need a really good offensive coordinator to complement what you do. And Steve's a really good offensive coach, and he needs a really good defensive coordinator, and he certainly has one in Ellis Johnson. So they're an outstanding all-around team. And Steve's a good offensive coach. And he's kind of the offensive coordinator too, and calls the plays and does a really good job.
Just a couple of quick ones, Coach. You mentioned their edge rushers having come off a game against a team who has a very good front 4. Is there carryover when it's back-to-back games like that can help with speed of the game and stuff for those guys?
Well, I think when you play good competition, it always gets you ready to play more good competition. And I think that we played against a good front that was athletic and could rush. These guys are a different defensive scheme from that standpoint, but they are athletic and they can rush, and they have a good pressure scheme. And they have really good players, and they do a good job executing it. There may be some carryover, but, we practice against good rushers all the time, and I think that's one of the differences in this league is that there's probably better cover people and better rushers. And that's probably almost there's quarterbacks everywhere, there's receivers everywhere, there's good runners everywhere, but more teams in this league have good rushers and people who can rush and are athletic, and better cover people who can cover, and this team has both. So that's what makes them a very good defensive team.
And in past year and a half, you've been talking about Rolando being a coach on the field. Is that something you can teach a player, or is that something that is developed through time? How do they get to be like that, really?
Well, I think there's several factors that probably go into it. First of all, the guy's got to want to be that kind of guy. He's got to want to be a leader. He's got to want to affect other people. And he's got to realize the importance of how that affects other people around him and how it can actually help him play better when other people do their job. But I think the fact that he's a very bright guy and has really good football instincts and has great understanding probably contributes. And his experience, knowledge and experience over this being the 3rd year that he started. There were times when he was freshman that, Roe's a very conscientious guy, wants to get it all right, wants to understand it, where he'd get frustrated because he didn't, and we even had to take him out a couple times to settle him down, play somebody else, get him where he was okay again, put him back in. But, because of those experiences, he's growing into a guy that really can handle and manage most situations in the game and has great understanding of, and he recognizes it, the recognition, on the field. And I don't think you play with all players that have that. And he certainly does, and he's certainly at a position where it can have a tremendous impact on the other players because he is the signal caller.